I'm Aryeh Schwartz, along with my co-host, Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr show where it's all about the W. Today, we're talking about W news and rumors. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. Today, we're talking WNBA news and rumors. Obviously, top of the hour, top of the day, top of the show. We got to talk about one of the greatest defenders of all time retiring from the likes of the WNBA. We'll obviously be continuing many other important things in her life. But as it pertains to us, Alana Beard has retired. Just a few of her career highlights. Back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year award in 2017 and 2018. 5 first-team honors, 2007, 2012, 2016, 17, and 18. That's a nice stretch. 4 second-team honors in 2015, 2016, 2005, 2006, 2009, and 2014. She was named to the WNBA All-Star team 4 times, 2005 to 2007 and 2009. Beard averaged 11.3 points in her career, 3.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.7 steals per game, while shooting 43.5% from the field. She played in almost 420 games, 419 regular season games, and starting in 402 of them. That is wild. She also made 42 playoff appearances. And, well, she was a player who was all about business. It was always a pleasure to talk to her after games and get insight into so many things. And she was also a player that never wanted the spotlight on her and always deflected any defensive awards or compliments and regarded them as a team effort and a team thing. And that's obviously what you love to see. Rachel, talk to me about one of the greatest defenders of all time. I would put her up there and argue she might be greater, but it's her and Tamika Catchings in my book.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, we could have a whole show just on Alana Beard's career. I'm really happy for her, and honestly, I'm just thankful that I was able to, really be around in a time where I got a chance to watch her career. From the college game up into her 15 seasons in the WNBA. And I mean, talk about a player of just a lot of a lot of humility. Played humbly, didn't cause a huge scene. She just came to work and did her job, like you said, an extreme professional, true competitor, WNBA champion. I mean, anybody who embraces the defensive end of the floor and has that chip on her shoulder the way she did throughout her career and honestly, like, overcame a ton of adversity. Had to sit out those 2 seasons in between her time with the Washington Mystics and the LA Sparks, overcoming ankle and foot injuries that could have potentially been career ending. So, I mean, just an incredible player, to be able to have witnessed throughout her career, and so happy for her. And honestly, like, I'm a little bit bummed out because she was just one of those players that, when you saw Alana Beard on the court, it was like it drew you in that much more. The way she played on that end of the floor, and really both ends of the floor, just her toughness and what she brought is such a backbone to LA Sparks the most recent years in particular. But happy for her for sure. But selfishly, I'm definitely gonna miss her.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, she's that type of player who is one of the reasons why I love the WNBA, because you saw her giving 110% every second she was out there. She played intense defense and worked her behind off on offense. A little stat that I forgot to include running down her accolades was a 9-time all defensive team selection.
Yeah.
9 times. Like, that says a lot. And honestly, a player like her is a player who you look at her all-star nominations and you kind of go, yeah, well, that's because people don't vote based on defense, which is kind of messed up. But, that's just what it is. But I completely agree with you. Like, I mean, you always got excited when you would see her play. And I think this is going to have a huge effect on the LA Sparks. I mean, even later, again, we're talking about her getting the Defensive Player of the Year award in 2017 and 2018. Like, that's the tail end of her career, and that just shows you what
Yep.
type of player she was and the intensity that she brought. And it's got to be a blow. I mean, I'm sure LA knew about this, but it's got to be a blow because you're talking about someone who not only was a defensive icon, but also someone who could help educate the other players on her team. I know, TRP, Tara Ruffin Pratt, constantly spoke about it this past season about how Beard would guide her and kind of educate her and help her become a top defensive player. And so it's got to be, for the bench coaching, as I like to call it, and just from the state of having her as a player, it's a blow to the team.
It is, but I wish her nothing but the best in the next chapter of her career and being a mom and all those exciting things. I'm just excited to see what's next for her. Wish her the best.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Everybody knows that one of the greatest rivalries in WNBA history has got to be the LA Sparks and the Minnesota Lynx. So in classic WNBA Lynx Sparks fashion, no big day with LA Sparks news could go on without a big day in Minnesota Lynx news also. And props to one of the GOATs in WNBA history, Maya Moore. I don't know if she specifically timed it this way. Knowing her, she probably didn't. But in my, fantasy world, she 100% was like, I'm going to wait for Alana Beard to retire for me to make my announcement. Obviously, that's in jest. But Maya Moore announced yesterday on the through the New York Times that she'll be sitting out another year. Let me read a few quotes and then we'll get into it. Maya said, I'm in a really good place right now with my life, and I don't want to change anything, she told the Times in a telephone interview this past week. Basketball has been my foremost in my mind, and I don't feel like it is the right time for me to retire. Retirement is something that is a big deal, and there is a right way to do it well, and this is not the time for me. Now, as we all know, Moore was the Rookie of the Year in 2011, League MVP in 2014, a five-time All-Star, has a career average of 18.4 points, 5.9 rebounds, 3.3 assists per game. And frankly, the Lynx have done a relatively, I'm always torn about this. Yes, the Lynx have done a great job of rebuilding, considering you lost Brunson, Whalen, and Moore all in one fell swoop. And Simone's, knees are on their last days. And so Syl is kind of the only one left of the golden days, and it's been a huge blow. But I do strongly think that Cheryl Reeve has done a great job of, formulating this team and making up for it. Obviously, you lose those players, there's no way you're going to be at that same level, and it's going to take a few years, if not more, to get back to that level. So, I think there's obviously going to be a blowback for me to say that the Lynx have done a great job of rebuilding, but I truly feel like they have. And gotten a lot of nice pieces together, and it's going to take a little bit of time to rebuild the culture that they have. That being said, let's talk about those quotes and what they say to you, Rachel. I mean, I know both of us feel like she's never coming back, but what do those quotes change your mind? Do they kind of make you think that more? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I had several people, ask me, are you surprised by this? And I think, when you're involved in the WNBA, and as much as we are and the fans are that we are working with day in and day out, I feel like this isn't that big of a surprise. It was obviously a big news when she first announced it prior to 2019, but the fact that we're here and she's going to sit out another season, like I wasn't too incredibly surprised. I felt like this time away for her, in the criminal justice reform and Jonathan Irons helping him out with his case is something that's far greater than just one season. I think the part that I might have been a little bit, maybe like put an asterisk with it would have been the Olympics. But just the way the rosters have trended, the last couple of months and the moves that Team USA is making as they prepare for their 2020 gold medal run in Tokyo, you got the vibe that Maya Moore was not going to be a part of that. So, I mean, overall, not surprised by this. I'm very happy for Maya Moore. I think anyone who can stand in their truth and follow the path in which they feel they are supposed to be on at any given time is sometimes not easy. And everybody has an opinion as to what they think is best. But at the end of the day, this is her life, man. And I really respect her staying true to what it is she needs right now. I think the part that kind of, I don't know if it surprised me, but she talked about the retirement and returning and those types of things, and she wasn't willing to say, She left the door open for her to come back whenever that might be. She wasn't willing to say. She was a little more tight-lipped with that after 2019 when she first came out and announced this time away. So, she left the door open, and she didn't allude to, well, yeah, I may not come back or anything like that. She every hint in those quotes, everything she spoke of makes you feel like she will return someday. I don't know. Do you feel the same way?
I don't know. I'm very torn. One, because as we know in a interview earlier, one of she's been, like you said, very tight-lipped about even speaking about any of this, and so has Link's organization. One thing that stuck out was in like the last interview where she even touched on this. She said something to the effect, I'm not going to quote her exactly, but she hasn't touched the ball or trained since the end of the season that she last played in. And that was a huge thing for me. For me, like, there's part of me that says she's an elite athlete. Like, training probably means one thing to her that means something completely different to you and I. No offense to you. I know you're an elite athlete. Also, no offense, you're not on my Moore level. So for me, it was like, okay, when she says that, what does she mean? That's kind of, a little bit shady. It's not super shady, but it was a little bit unique. And speaking of unique, she had another quote in this New York Times article where she said, "I've had such unique experience in the game. I got to experience the best of my craft, and I did that multiple times. There is nothing more I wish I could experience." So for me, it's almost like the drive is gone to a degree, and now she has this drive for something else, and almost, okay, if she accomplishes what her goal is with Jonathan, with criminal justice reform, could that possibly light a fire for her to move on to something else? And that possibly could be coming back to the league. Me personally, I don't see her ever coming back for a few reasons. One, I think that after a certain point of being out of the league, like, this isn't the WNBA of its beginning stages where you have players who, haven't played in a while. This isn't in the NFL when you have like a punter who's been, laying tile at Home Depot for the past 5 months and like punting in his backyard can come back and do this. Like, if Maya Moore is going to come back to the W, she's going to do it in a sense of knowing she can perform at a top level that she holds herself to. That being said, I also just kind of get the sense from the quotes that, like, she essentially is retiring but doesn't want to close that book, and she doesn't want to be the type of person to be like, I'm retiring, and then a little bit later be like, no, I'm not, never mind.
Yeah. I feel like, not to interrupt you, but I feel like we feel like sometimes we have to have a definitive answer right this moment. And I was with you, prior to reading the actual quotes, I really felt like, she's not coming back. She's not coming back. But after reading it, and you really think about this, and she's saying, I'm in a really good place in my life right now. She didn't know where she was going to be a year after she made this announcement. So much can happen in the next 6 months to a year. And is it fair to say that maybe at this point, Maya Moore doesn't even know what she's going to do a year from now? And I think, not to speak for her, but that's kind of more of the vibe I get, is kind of living this day by day, living in this truth of what she feels she needs to do, leaving the book for the potential of a return, because let's be honest, she's one of the greatest in the world. She could do that, and stepping away and not touching a basketball for a couple of years is completely okay. That sounds crazy coming from a former coach and someone who did it, but there's a certain mental health aspect to this, of stepping away from something for a while, and we've seen players do it before. So I think my stance on this from here on out, where I have kind of said, yeah, I don't think she's going to come back, I'm going to stop saying that, because I don't know if Maya actually knows what's going to happen a year from now, as we're talking about the 2021 season. I think that's ever changing and ever evolving. And she talks about her faith a lot, and in her mind, letting God kind of direct her in that way. It might be fair to say that, she doesn't know what's going to happen a year from now.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, as a WNBA fan, I hope to God that God just like creates a cloud that is shaped like a basketball going in the hoop, and she sees that as a sign to come back, because I think the W is a better league with Maya Moore in it. That being said, I completely agree with everything you're saying. The other ridiculous side of me is, we all know I'm a ridiculous person. The other ridiculous side of me, sees the connection of her and Jordan Brand and can't help but think of her and Michael Jordan. And I almost want her to retire even though she doesn't know, just so she can come out of retirement and just dominate the league like we have seen people do, i.e. Michael Jordan. But again, that's the ridiculousness in me. And yeah, I mean, obviously for Beard and more, we wish them all the success in all their future endeavors. They have, paid their dues, as it was, and given us some of the most entertaining and exciting moments of our lives. And all we can do is thank them for what they have done and wish them the best for what they continue to do.
Well said. Good job.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Rachel never says that. But let's move on to a little bit another fun aspect of this episode. WNBA rumors. Let's talk about a few things. We're right in the free agency period, right in the time where teams are making qualifying offers to reserve players, and a plethora of other people are negotiating in a variety of different ways. So let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, follow us on Twitter, follow us on our website where we've been breaking it down with our free agency tracker and doing all of that because I'm not afraid of a shameless plug. Let's talk about first on the list, DeWanna Bonner. In my opinion, the biggest name and the best free agent in free agency. And DeWanna Bonner, to me, I've said this before, might be a hot take considering the roster that she's been on. For the past 2 years, in my mind, she's been the best player on the Phoenix Mercury roster. I know that's a hot take because you have, you got Brittany Griner, you got Diana Taurasi, you got a few other players who I think most people would just say, yeah, she's better than. But to me, DeWanna Bonner is just a ridiculously talented, good player. Word on the street, rumor. Again, these are rumors, people. When we go live with sources are telling us, that means somebody close to the matter, someone with knowledge of the matter. These are rumors that we are hearing in discussions with people who have some knowledge of certain areas, but it's like broken telephone that we're playing right now when we're talking about rumors. We're not talking about we heard it from Bonner that she's going to do this. If we heard that, we'd be publishing that news. But rumor is she wants to stay in Phoenix, and from my estimates, they can max her out with the new CBA and she can cash in. It's interesting, though, because that's a view from, is she happy in Phoenix, which my understanding is she is, and, they're going to be able to pay her a max deal, most likely, but that doesn't bring in, the typical view when we talk about free agency and rumors and whatnot in most leagues is money, are they happy, and championships. So that checks off two of them. But championships. Obviously, Phoenix is going to be a contender to some degree, just based off of who their roster is and having Sandy Brondello. But I think there's a fair argument to be made that the style of play, and, I have consistently said that Sandy is an underrated coach and doesn't get the respect of other coaches who have won championships and who have consistently been there. And I think that has to do with a lot with her roster. But I will say last year I was a little disappointed. Just for the fact of, I think so much of their system is built around Taurasi that when Taurasi was out, they weren't able to shift to a new system. And also I have concerns about Bonner and BG playing together because to me, Bonner just needs a ton of space and just let her work. Just let her do stuff, kind of like you do with Candace Parker or with your fave, Elena Deladon. Talk to me about Bonner and kind of just championship aspiration aspect of it, Rachel.
Yeah, I agree with your point about Phoenix and last year being a bit of a disappointment. I mean, this is a roster that it feels like has been together for quite some time now. And you're kind of wondering, like, is it time to kind of switch some things up and make some drastic changes? Are you trying to breathe new life in it, with some moves? This offseason, you kind of get that vibe, but at the end of the day, there were some injuries. Taurasi was never really present last year in terms of her ability to be on the court. BG really picked it up towards the end of the year. DeWanna Bonner started the year out as one of the top players in the league in terms of her ability to score. So, I mean, I would be shocked if she didn't return to Phoenix. I really would. And that's not, I'm just going off my gut feeling and just kind of the vibe with it. I think, like you said, she seems incredibly happy there to me. And that's a place where she's able to play the style that she's wanting to play. So, I mean, if I were a betting woman, I would think that she would, like you said, remain in Phoenix, get signed to that max deal, and continue to kind of build with this core of players, tremendous players, all stars that they have on this team. But I do question the Mercury roster, the next couple of years moving forward, and them being able to compete for a title, not because of any age or anything. I mean, yeah, Tarazi's at the tail end of her career, and you do feel like there needs to be a roster change, but I think there's a couple teams that have been like that. We could look at LA right now and kind of feel like, okay, this is kind of been together they've been together for a while. You got some players who, might be reaching the tail end of their careers. Like what's that going to look like? It's kind of like how Minnesota was looking, those final couple years before, everybody started retiring. And so I don't see her leaving and going anywhere. I mean, not to say that's not possible. It totally is. I mean, I'm sure there are countless teams in this league who would love to have DeWanna Bonner on their roster. But just with the makeup of this and what it's going to take to get her, I feel like that'll be extremely tough. I see her returning to Phoenix, if I had to guess at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But in a fantasy world, I think, her going to a few other teams, like, could you imagine, her on Minnesota, her on
Dallas,
honestly, Dallas, Atlanta. Oh man, okay, this is kind of ridiculous, but her on New York paired with Charles, I think would just be ridiculous. And she could literally fit onto, she is so good. She could fit onto almost any team. Obviously, put her on, I guess we should talk about this. There are rumors that Emma Meesseman might not return this season due to Olympics and national team commitments. Obviously, have not heard anything about that, but we are working on getting Coach T on the podcast, and we're going to point blank ask him. But, there's very few teams that I wouldn't want to see her on because I feel like it wouldn't maximize her skill set. So obviously, I would just, the guy in me who plays 2K and NBA Live and all these different games, and you do like these fantasy drafts or whatever, and you get all these like all-star rosters. That's the person in me who's like, man, I wish I could see her on another team. But end of the day, I agree with you. My gut's saying she stays in Phoenix. Talking about another big free agent, Angel McCoughtry. Rumor is she's going to see a new team, even though from our understanding, they are able to core her one more time. But my understanding, or not my understanding, rumor is that she's going to see a new team. And as the rumors go, there's been a lot of talk. LA and New York now are on the short list. Now, why do I say those? Well, first of all, I think you have to be crazy to not consider LA on a lot of these short lists for free agents because they already have a star-studded roster, and yes, all the big name players know each other, and obviously they have their own relationships, but that a lot of these players have been around and played with each other, with national team commitments overseas and just been around each other and in the league for a long time. So also, pair that with the fact that it's LA and there's so many opportunities there for players to get paid outside of the WNBA and get other job opportunities. We saw Essence Carson get working with a record label. We've seen Candace Parker work for TNT or wherever she's working now. We've seen a plethora of stuff like that, and LA is just a huge market. And I think the same for New York. Also, New York has this new ownership, this new arena that they're going to be playing in, and probably tapping into a new fan base. So I got to think that both of them are definitely up there, and they both need more scoring. I mean, who doesn't need more scoring? Any thoughts on Angel, Rachel?
Well, I just think you hit a great point about some of these players, hitting the tail end of their career and kind of what's next after basketball. And I think we could look at that Atlanta Dream roster, and after what happened last year, get the notion that you might have a few key players on that roster towards the tail end of their career whose minds might be elsewhere outside of, focusing on just playing in the WNBA. So I think, that would absolutely make complete sense for Angel to want to be at a new place, to mix it up, get a final, few good years in there at a different spot. I would not be surprised to see her, with a different team. everything that we've seen, from the season to her walking out on the court and some of the things she's posted, it definitely leads to that. But on the flip side of that, I really feel like the Atlanta Dream is a roster that we could really see get blown up after last year. I think that's kind of a bit of an unknown, and I could see head coach Nikki Collin making some really aggressive moves this offseason to kind of switch it up, Angel being a part of that. So that for me, if I had to look at one team in terms of what they're doing with their roster and how they're going to build it headed into 2020, Atlanta has my full attention because I could see some big time changes going there. And obviously at the forefront of that is Angel.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's also, I rarely say this because, you always have to kind of toy between or like hop between it's a business. And I think, sometimes in the W, because it's not as big as a variety of other leagues as far as attention on it, that maybe a little less often people understand that this is a business and it needs to be treated as so. But there's also the player side of it. And I feel like Angel has paid her dues in Atlanta, and it's time to let her see what she can do elsewhere.
Well, and I think sometimes it's really refreshing to just have a new experience. She has had such a great career there in Atlanta and such a tremendous time and what she's been able to do in that city. Sometimes you kind of just need that in your career, especially coming off of an injury. You're feeling like you're getting a fresh start somewhere else. It can really rejuvenate someone, and it can really rejuvenate their career. So that's one of the highest ones on my list in terms of what could happen. And honestly, I'm just excited that she's back. I'm excited that she's going to be playing with Team USA in Louisville at the beginning of February, kind of for that final collegiate matchup with Team USA. So just really excited overall for her career, and the fact that hopefully we get a few good years left of watching her, because she's like, we can all agree she's one of the most dynamic players that the league's ever seen.
She's so entertaining to watch, and if anybody follows Louisville basketball on social media, you definitely should go watch the video that they did kind of hyping up her coming back, and playing around with the Team USA thing. It was hilarious and so accurate. Moving forward to my state of origin, the Minnesota Lynx are on the prowl, and Minnesota Lynx fans will get that pun. Prowl, their mascot name. They're on the prowl for a guard. That's a rumor that I keep hearing. And we know D-Rob is a free agent, so let's be prepared for some big Lynx free agency movement. We've seen Cheryl Reeve do it before. We've seen her, honestly, when she had those starting five, it was much more small little moves. I don't want to call them pawn moves, but small moves to kind of secure and solidify the bench. But now, what I saw over the past 2 years, or the past year, is Reeve really build up a stockpile of players that, in my opinion, have a lot of talent and have a lot of specific skill sets that are useful to a variety of teams throughout the league, and kind of gives her a lot of trade power. So I'm excited to see what she's going to do. She's, I'm not going to quote her on this or anything, but if I'm Cheryl Reeve, I'm a little pissed about how the last 2 seasons have kind of ended. And she's made it very clear that to her, the benchmark of a dynasty is 20 years. They've gone through the first 10. Now they're looking at the next 10, how they can recreate or create their new dynasty, and continue it for 10 more. And that's gonna kind of be the key there. Any thoughts on the Lynx?
All I can say is just be prepared for some big Lynx movement. I really feel like that's a place that everyone should keep their eyes on. I think we're going to have some exciting news coming down the pike when it comes to Minnesota Lynx the next couple months.
Nice. And obviously we can't talk about Lynx without talking about the Sparks. A lot of talk, Sparks don't have a GM right now, and rightfully so. There should be a little bit of attention put to that. Not a little bit, a good amount of attention. The key positions for a team are GM, PR, and coaches. And currently, the Sparks don't have a GM. Now, with that in mind, I do want to say, rumor has it that, or as Brady Klopfer has reported, Michael Fisher has been running ship, kind of, as we've all seen, if you've been following us on social media, that the Sparks have been making moves during this free agency period and during the offseason. So with that being understood, I think there is some attention that needs to be put that, like, honestly, he's, in my opinion, deserved a shot at this. And I say that because, not because, I know him personally, I've met him a few times or whatever, but the guy's been around for so long and has worked so closely with Penny. A lot of people told me after Penny left that he was kind of driving the ship, even with Penny around, and doing a lot of the legwork and the muscle work. And he's somebody who, honestly, look, if you want to talk realistically, someone who's been around for like 20 years at an assistant GM position deserves a shot at GM at the end of the day. You can disagree with like some moves he's made. And yes, I think there are some question marks as far as this roster and competing with the modern WNBA game. But there's also something to be said about how they've kind of stockpiled overseas players and star talent. Yeah, thoughts on LA?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit surprised that we're here. January 23rd is when we're recording, and we still don't really have much news about this. And honestly, not a lot of people are talking about it. I keep talking about it because I'm not real sure why. I'm fascinated with the whole situation. I don't really understand why nothing's in place at this point in the game, but I do feel, Michael Fisher, I do know, and I know he is one of the most tireless workers in the WNBA. The guy has a plethora of experience. He's won championships. He's been around since the Houston Comet days. In terms of his level of experience. And so, maybe they're not in a huge rush to bring in a different name because he is running the ship and things are functioning. It's just been quiet, and I'm anxious to see the moves that they make, because I think this move is really going to tell us the direction in which, they see this franchise moving forward. I agree that Michael Fisher deserves a shot. But when you just fired Penny Toller and you have a guy so directly related to her, you have to ask the question, well, do we continue down the tree of Penny Toller era, or do we completely switch things up and go in a different direction and bring something completely different in here? And that's, to me, that's the telling part of this. Do you keep kind of that longevity that the Sparks have had for such a long time, and quote unquote, maybe the safe hire, if you will, in being Michael Fisher? Or do you go in a completely different direction in terms of being aggressive and knowing that this roster is going to be turned over and have some great changes here in the next 5 years? So I'm fascinated with it because not only is it the LA Sparks, everybody wants to be there. It's one of the most premier teams, franchises in the league. And I'm just, a little bit perplexed as to what the holdup is. But that, to me, speaks to the credibility and the experience of Michael Fisher and his ability to run the ship. So I'm torn. I can't sit here and say if I was a betting woman, I would guess this. I honestly have no idea which direction they're going to go. I could see it going with Fisher. I could see them bringing in someone completely out of the blue that no one's really thought about. So I just, that's just something I've got my attention, that has my attention greatly right now, because it's going to play a role with this franchise moving forward in every aspect.
Yeah. And, look, we talk about players having kind of a ripple effect or a domino effect throughout the league. GMs are like a giant domino. So just think about it that way. The last rumor, I guess, not even really, but just something that I know people have been reaching out to you asking about, the fans have been asking about, and I see it constantly all over the blogosphere and in different fandoms. Rebecca Brunson. If you follow Cheryl Reeves' podcast, I believe her quote exactly was, I think it's time for the fans to read the writing on the wall, that essentially Rebecca will not be coming back to play. She's been working with FSN North, covering and reporting and announcing for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And a lot of people have been asking, what do we know about her? What do we know about her? Is she going to, and I think, Reeve made it clear that they are looking for an all-female staff with the adaptation in the new CBA that states you can have an extra, a third full-time assistant coach. And if it's a player or a former player, I would love to see a player coach combo. But if it's a former player, that they're able to sit on the bench. Yep. So there's been a lot of talk about that. Everyone knows Brunson. Everyone knows how much of a hard worker and a studious player she was. So I think there's been a lot of rumors about, will she be coming back to Minnesota as a coach? Will she not? Will she not? So I just wanted to put that out there. But quickly, Rachel, I would like your insight as a former coach, a former player. Talk to me about this adaptation in the new CBA, allowing for a third coach and for that coach possibly to travel and sit with the team. What does that mean to, everyday fans, everyday, people who watch the league might not understand why, they might see that as a footnote that doesn't mean anything. What does that mean to you?
It's huge. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of this new CBA. One, that we need to have more assistant coaches in the WNBA. They're right now with two, and it can get difficult, and you're shape-shifting positions and video coordinators and all these different titles. Coaches need more than two assistant coaches. And then I think it benefits the women's basketball coaching tree. We talk about we need more women coaches. We need more former players out here coaching. And this is a great way for a player who it gets done with their career. And this is this is a whole other tangent I won't even get on. But when a player is done with their career and they've played, however many years, 15, however many years, and you're in your late 30s and you're trying to figure out kind of what's next, that can be a really crazy, difficult time to kind of figure out what is next for me. What comes next after basketball. Coaching has always been for at the collegiate level, the professional level, a great avenue, a natural transition for a lot of great players to get into that coaching world. And so I love this rule. I think it's only going to enhance the fandom. It's only going to enhance the professionalism in terms of developing young coaches, continuing to develop the next generation of great coaches in our game. But at the most important level, people who've been there and done it as a player, women who have been there and done it as a player. We need more women's coaches. So this is a great way to bring some of the best, most talented women in the world and get them into that next phase, whether their career remains in the WNBA ranks or overseas coaching or collegiate coaching, whatever that might be. It's creating more opportunities to breed the next generation of coaches, and I think that's phenomenal. I'm very excited about it. Should have been implemented a long time ago.
All right, well, you heard it here, not first, but you heard an explanation that I think a lot of people have lacked an understanding of, and I appreciate that, Rachel, as always. And as always, we believe the players of the W and its community deserve the same in-depth analysis and respect that men's sports receives on a daily basis. With that in mind, please consider joining our Patreon community. Help support us in the hard work that we do.